Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Awaken to Truth, and I am Michael Smith. If you would, I would appreciate it so much if you would take the time to like this video. Just give it a thumbs up. That's helpful. Also, if you have not subscribed, I'd love to earn your subscription if you find the information on this channel valuable. And love to have you engage and leave a comment. Whether you agree, whether you don't agree, doesn't matter to me. Just love to have you engage and leave a comment in the comment section below. But we're going to get in today another installment of the kind of mini series that I started on patterns of prosperity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag each of these videos at the end after the title, Patterns of Prosperity, so that you'll know it's one of the videos of this series. But also, I'm going to order those in a playlist, and you'll be able to go, if you know how to get to the playlist for each channel, you could go to that playlist and just go through the videos in this series. We'll probably do 4 or 5 of them. This is the third, and so let's get into it today. Today, I'm going to, approach the topic not just of the patterns of prosperity, but within these biblical patterns of prosperity, we also find that there are things that are prosperity killers or things that hinder us from prosperity. If you want to look at it in a spiritual sense, you could say that these are traps, or these are devices of the adversary, of the enemy, to keep us from entering into what God has for us. And so Deuteronomy 28, verse 48 and 49 gives us one of these prosperity killers, or one of these traps that'll keep us from prosperity. And that's simply disobedience. It says that you did not serve the Lord with joy and gladness for the abundance of everything. Now, I want you to hear that. It says you did not serve the Lord with joy and gladness for the abundance of everything. So in this scenario, they had everything that they needed. They didn't even just have enough, they had more than what they needed. But it says you didn't serve the Lord your God in gladness. So in other words, they were not glad for what they had. They were not thankful for what they had. They were simply wanting more. And it says, because you did not, because you did not serve the Lord your God in joy and gladness for the abundance of everything, therefore you will serve your enemies who the Lord has sent against you. So if we do not serve the Lord in joy and in gladness for the things that we have, whether we have as much as we could possibly want, or whether we have just enough, or maybe we have more than we need, but not as much as we'd like. If we do not have a thankfulness and a gladness in our heart towards the Lord in serving him, then that is going to be a prosperity killer. And one of the reasons that that kills prosperity is because when we are not thankful for what we have, typically there's a root cause, and that root cause is we're longing and wanting more. We can't stop and give thanks for what we have, because we have to look at what we don't have and desire after that. So a lack of thankfulness for what we have leads to desiring what we don't have and forgetting to be thankful to the Lord for the things that we do have. Now, this is not overly complicated, but it's something that we can easily forget. It's something that we can easily lose sight of. That's why Peter would say, not necessarily in this context, but that's why Peter would say, I want to stir your mind up in remembrance. I want to stir your remembrance. I want to make you remember. So if anything, I just want to make you remember today. Be thankful for the things that you have. Don't just focus on the things that you don't have. When you constantly focus on the things that you don't have, number one, you become unhappy. Number two, it impacts your attitude, your emotions, your outlook. Number three, it causes you to fail in seeing opportunities that are right in front of you. If you're constantly thinking about what you don't have and what's not right in your life and what's not good in your life, then you're going to miss the things that God could be putting right in front of you to bless you and to bring you to another level in your life. You're going to miss those opportunities because you have not focused on what is good. You have focused on what is negative or what you don't have. And ultimately, it leads to that old-fashioned word of materialism. We become materialistic. We look for the next thing to fulfill us. We look for the next item to fulfill it, whether it's a new car, whether it's a new watch, whether it's a new house, whether it's new shoes, whatever it is. We look for that next material thing to fulfill us. I've known people that actually have had kind of like a fetish with Bibles, like they've liked super nice Bibles. And at times, some of these people that I've known, they didn't really have the money to be spending money on additional Bibles, and they already had 10 Bibles, but they wanted number 11. And so it seemed like such a noble thing. I want more Bibles, but literally they were being kind of materialistic with Bibles. They thought that the next Bible with the fancy cover is going to somehow make me happier than the last 3 Bibles with the fancy cover that I bought. And so that goes to show that we can literally become materialistic about anything. And materialism is something that is rarely talked about today, but it is just as big of a problem as it has ever been. Now, on the opposite of being unthankful or not being glad, obviously, is that we are thankful and we are glad in what the Lord has given us. And here's the thing. Abundance is somewhat defined by the culture and maybe the place that we live. Because in some areas, if you have 2 of something, that is completely abundant. Now, in America or some other countries in the world, maybe just barely having more than you need is not considered abundance. Maybe by that cultural standard, that's not considered abundance. But in many places, it is. If you have just a little more than you need, then that is abundant. In some places, having what you need would be considered abundant because they simply do not have enough. So we have to keep those things in mind. But when we're thankful for what we have, it leads to something very powerful in our life. And it's something that is a part of this pattern of prosperity. And it leads to contentment. 1 Timothy 6:6 says, now, godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it's certain that we will bring nothing out. We didn't bring anything in, and it's guaranteed, it's certain. There's not that many things in life that are absolutely certain, but it's guaranteed, it's certain that you brought nothing in, and it's just as certain that you're going to take nothing out. So contentment leads to contentment actually supplements or complements godliness, because godliness leads to contentment and contentment leads to more godliness. They work in tandem. They work hand in hand. And so there's a warning against discontentment in Scripture. 1 Timothy 6:9 says, those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and snare, many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men into destruction and into perdition. And then the next verse is that famous scripture that says, the love of money is the root of all evil. So contentment leads us to more godliness. It also puts us in God's pattern of prosperity. Ironically, you would think, wanting more should put it. No, it's being content. That helps us to be in God's pattern and God's rhythm of prosperity. The desire, or you could even use that word lust, lusting after riches is what is going to cause us much harm. It's going to put us in a place where we're much more susceptible to falling into snares, as Paul said. And ultimately, it could lead us to destruction and perdition if we don't get off of that road and get off of that pattern and out of that pattern and into God's pattern. So some would say, well, that proves it. Being rich is evil. Being rich is bad. No, that's not the case. I'm not promising anybody. I'm not like a prosperity preacher that I'm going to promise anybody that you're going to be wealthy, because there's so many different variables that go along with that. It would be ridiculous for me to sit here and make a blanket statement that every single person that serves God is going to be wealthy as it is defined as we know it. But you will have abundance and you will have prosperity. And in that prosperity, there will not be scarcity in any area of your life. Because just because there's warning against riches, it doesn't mean that being rich is necessarily a bad thing. Paul makes that clear in 1 Timothy 6:17. He says, command those who are rich. Now, I want you to listen to me. If you're rich and you're listening to me, if you're wealthy and you're listening to me, if you're someone that's in the upper echelon, listen, because it doesn't say suggest to those that are rich. It says command to those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but the living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy. So Paul is giving Timothy a command for Timothy to pass on to those who are rich in this present age, as Paul puts it. And why is it that they shouldn't be haughty? What is the source, or what is the origination that should enable them to be wealthy and not haughty or prideful about it at the same time? Well, that takes us back to Deuteronomy 8:18, where the Lord reminds them, he says, don't be prideful and lifted up in your hearts, looking around saying, look at the houses that I've built. Look at the silver and the gold that I have amassed. Look at the cattle and the possessions that I have. He said, no, you need to remember that it was the Lord your God who gives you the power to get wealth. So wealth and abundance are graces and gifts of God. Not everybody is necessarily going to be wealthy, but everybody, if they follow God's pattern of prosperity, is going to be abundant in every area of their life. Going back to the scripture I mentioned in the previous video, 3 John, where he says, I would that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. It's God's will to prosper you. That doesn't mean that there are not warnings and pitfalls that we have to guard against. That's why serving the living God requires a living faith and active participation from our hearts. It's not just a formula or something that we can go through ritualistically. It is a living relationship with him. And in that living relationship, he leads us and he guides us in everything that we need, because Peter would say that God has given unto us by his divine mercy and his divine power all things as it pertains to life and godliness, not just some things as it pertains to godliness, or all things as it pertains to godliness and some things as it pertains to life, but he puts the two together. He says all things as it pertains to the life that you live and the godliness that God desires for you. He'll supply everything that we need in those two areas. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. God bless you, and I will be back with another video very soon.